think that payroll and payroll professionals are kind of making the world go round. People being paid on time, being paid the right amount is just such an important part of people's lives. Sometimes, turning to friends and family, which can be a positive thing, but can also be quite fraught. So not enough people have savings. Now, what does that mean for them as an employee? It has negative health impacts. So negative impacts on mental health, on physical health. And clearly there's a connection there into being able to be in work and being able to be productive in work. So money related worry, anxiety, mental health problems are one of the things that is preventing people being in work or being able to work well and productively when they're...
Here's a pre-show scenario for you. Imagine you had to visit 6 houses just to cook your dinner. One place has the pots and pans, one has the stove, another has the food. You get the idea. Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, the reality is most global businesses operate the same way, using 6 different tools just to pay their global workforce. But now there's one platform offering truly simple, truly global payroll. And that's today's sponsor. That's Deel. That's Deel. With in-house customer success managers, local payroll experts, dedicated points of contact, and more, Deel eliminates third-party handovers and provides unmatched compliance and flexibility. In fact, they'll even help you track and flag the latest changes in payroll regulations before they even become an issue. So are you ready to transform your global payroll system? If you are, click the link in the show notes below to book a demo with Deel today. That's Deel. I'm your host. My name is Nick Day. I'm CEO at JJ Recruitment Group. We're specialist payroll recruiters. Thank you, our listeners, for listening to today's episode. If you do get a moment, please remember to subscribe to the show. But most importantly, please do share it with all of your colleagues and friends so we can really raise the profile of payroll for everyone worldwide. We've got a really interesting subject to talk about today. We're going to be focused on how we can unlock financial well-being through smarter payroll. We know that payroll is fully immersed now in the employee experience, and this is one way we can really help push that narrative. To do that, I've welcoming today Jo Phillips to the show. Now, this has come from a press release that was dropped into my inbox that was really giving me some really interesting insights. It told me that almost half of UK workers experience financial difficulties, especially those on low, variable and unpredictable incomes, who often check their pay slip carefully. It also told me that most pay slips have limited information and don't connect to other workplace benefits or other money management support, and that payday is an underused opportunity to support employees with their broader financial well-being. Now, they were the headline stats, and that led me to invite Jo, who is Director of Research and Innovation at Nest Insight, that were behind that research, onto the show today to really delve into this in a little bit more detail. So, Jo, it's wonderful to have you with us. I'm hoping your work and your research is going to shed some light on the crucial role that payroll can play in really not just in dispersing earnings, but in shaping financial health for the employees that they support. So, Jo Phillips, welcome to the Payroll Podcast. How are you feeling?
Thank you, Nick. And thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Great to have you on the show. I'm great the way that it's landed as well. From something that came into my inbox, I reached out and straight away, it's great to be able to book this conversation in. I think it's a really important topic. But before we dive into it, I'm going to ask you the first question, which I ask all of my guests, which is this: what does the word payroll mean to you?
So the word that pops into my head when you say payroll, honestly, is heroes. So over the past 5 years or so, I have been lucky enough to work with some just really fabulous payroll professionals. And I feel a right fraud coming on this podcast because I'm not a payroll professional. I've never run a payroll. I probably don't appreciate enough how complicated it is, but I've seen a bit of it. And, I think that payroll and payroll professionals are kind of making the world go round. People being paid on time, being paid the right amount is just such an important part of people's lives. Delighted to be here. Not a payroll professional, but have been kind of coming at things from a slightly different angle.
That's all good. Well, look, you're in a safe space. I've never processed a payroll before either, so don't worry. We're in a similar category there. But there's many people that work in payroll that don't process, from payroll analysts to payroll developers to engineers to implementation consultants, and to those, of course, delivering training or undertaking research. So before we delve into the topic of financial well-being, perhaps we can just then, just give us a foundation in terms of what Nest Insight do in your role, so people do understand how payroll kind of infiltrates the work that you do.
Yeah, sure. So Nest Insight is a public benefit research and innovation centre. And the thing that we're working towards is lifelong financial security for every household. So we're thinking about both people's financial security today, but also looking kind of further long term into kind of planning ahead to retirement. We're focused on low, moderate and volatile income households. So if you like the kind of below median, average households and kind of lower paid households. And really what we do is try and understand what are the challenges that people face, what are the things that get in the way of people being in a position of financial security, and importantly, what might be some solutions to those challenges. So there's a lot of research that diagnoses problems, and clearly there are lots of problems and kind of lots of people struggling. And what we're trying to do is to better understand that. So what really is it that's stopping people? Which bit of the system, which behaviour, which difficulty, also kind of for which people? So who do we need to think about most when we're thinking about supporting financial security? But then also thinking about the world in which people live and the system around them. What are the touch points? What are the different places, the different solutions? What things could we join up to make things work better for people and make it easier for people to get to where they want to be? And that has involved over time working with quite a lot of employers, because employers are a really important touch point for people. They reach a lot of people. Clearly not everyone is employed, and we do some work around self-employed and kind of other groups too. But we've looked at things like workplace saving, and we've got a big program of work looking at different ways of doing workplace saving schemes. We've looked at things like workplace loans, kind of broader workplace benefits, earned wage access. And that's kind of one big part of our work. And that has involved over time kind of working with the payroll mechanism as a way of supporting people to kind of move their money in different ways and use it in different ways to get to a position of greater financial security.
Fantastic. I think that's what stuck out to me when I received that email. Was it wasn't just saying what the problems are, as you mentioned, it's talking about what a potential solution can be. I think the title of the research was highlighting how the potential for payroll to be a gateway to broader financial health. So let's start with the basics then. Why is financial well-being so important for employees? It may seem obvious, but what benefits does it offer to employers as well? Because it's a two-pronged thing, isn't it? If we get it right, it works for all parties. Well, that's certainly my understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we really need to think about the business case for employee financial security and boosting employee financial well-being, as well as the sort of very human case and the kind of moral case, if you like. So far too many people in the UK lack a kind of basic level of financial resilience, lack kind of any savings to deal with the kind of ups and downs of life that hit us all. So a month where you have less income than you expected, where you have to buy 3 pairs of school shoes in one go, where it's summer holidays as we're going into now and you're not getting the free school meals, all of those kind of fluctuations, the kind of financial shocks that hit people. And if you don't have a savings buffer in place to be able to go, okay, that's an extra £100 I wasn't expecting, but I can turn to my savings, then the alternatives can sort of be quite harmful for people and can sort of really prevent people from kind of being in a position of stability. So often people also don't have access to an overdraft or a credit card. And if you don't have those things, you're really looking at potentially quite high cost debt and potentially kind of debt spirals and all the problem that comes with that, going into bill arrears, really cutting back on essentials. So, there's been quite a lot of commentary over the, recent months about kind of cutting back on kind of heating and eating and, things that really impact people's quality of life and ability to survive, and sort of sometimes turning to friends and family, which can be a positive thing but can also be quite fraught. So not enough people have savings. Now, what does that mean for them as an employee? It has negative health impacts, so negative impacts on mental health, on physical health, and clearly there's a connection there into being able to be in work and being able to be productive in work. So money related worry, anxiety, mental health problems are one of the things that is preventing people being in work or being able to work well and productively when they're there. But there are also sort of other links through for employers. So there's some work just come out in the US that's looked at the fact that where people have savings in place, they're less likely to have accidents at work. So that was looking at particularly truck drivers. But we've heard employers in the UK making similar parallels to employers in construction industry, areas where kind of accidents at work are kind of particularly an issue. Clearly, if people are worrying about other things, they're not focused on the job. One of the employers we've worked with, Suez, there's a CIPD case study about the workplace savings program that we've worked on with them, and they've been kind of putting in place a broader financial wellbeing strategy and kind of all sorts of things to support their colleagues. And what they've seen is actually absence go down sort of quite significantly over time, and they've calculated the kind of financial impact of reducing absence, which has been quite significant for them. So I think there is a growing business case and a growing evidence base for employers, as well as looking after the colleagues' financial well-being because they feel that's the right thing to do, actually doing it because like there's a kind of strong commercial case for doing that as well.
I know certainly from the lens that I would view it from, which is the recruitment lens, like there has to be a knock-on impact with positive mental health, if you like, in relation to retention of employees. As you mentioned briefly about the impact on performance. If you feel supported by your employer, then you feel more included. You feel like you want to give back a little bit more. You're more likely to perform. That will definitely reduce absence anyway because you feel more engaged. And engagement is a critical measure, not just for payroll professionals, but for HR professionals as well. And of course, one of the biggest costs for any business is, and one of the struggles that a lot of HR directors are certainly commenting on at the minute, is that struggle to retain top talent and then recruit top talent. But if we get this bit right, for me, there's an obvious impact for employers to say, look, if we look after employees, the employers will look after you, and that's shown in productivity and all the other things as well. So I think it's absolutely right that employers take this really seriously. And I know that when we've had a couple of people on the show in the past that talked about earned wage access, which is something you mentioned a little bit earlier in your introduction, you know, a lot of the earned wage access providers are there to hopefully try and plug that gap where people do need to take expensive, borrow money at expensive rates and things like that. What's been your experience in relation to earned wage access? I only highlight it because you mentioned it earlier, and it can be quite a controversial subject in the world of payroll. Not everyone necessarily is familiar with it. There's issues where a lot of the providers will potentially charge the employees for that access. My view would be that should be an employer cost, but that's a personal view. But I'd love to get from the side that you've been looking at it from a research perspective, what your view is on earned wage access and how that potentially supporting employees or not, if that may be the case.
Yeah, it's absolutely Marmite, isn't it?
He
has such sort of strong views about it. So I think one thing that we found through our research, and we've done a bit around earned wage access, we'd like to do some more because there isn't a good kind of independent study of the impact of earned wage access, and I think that's something we really need. But from the exploratory research that we've done, I think one thing that is really clear is that employees who are using earned wage access often really value it and have quite a different experience and a different need, which is driving that view of it than from perhaps employer decision makers. And I think the key difference there is often sort of people who are thinking about whether or not to implement earned wage access are salaried employees. You know, they have a regular monthly wage, and they don't have that kind of variability of pay that is one of the reasons why people find earned wage access useful. And so what you quite often hear is earned wage access is bad because it's kicking the can down the road. You know, if you take some money from your wages this month, you're just going to have to do the same next month and the month after that. And that sort of assumes that you're paid the same every month. Whereas what we hear from people is, you know, one use case, for example, was someone saying it was the summer holidays, I'd had to cut back on my hours because I was looking after my children, and an opportunity came up to take them swimming. And I really wanted to take them swimming. It was near the end of the holidays. I knew my next paycheck was going to be bigger because I'd be back to the usual shift pattern. I'd be doing more work. And being able to access my earned wages early was the difference between being able to take my children to do this activity in the holidays and not being able to do that. So it's a really considered decision making. And I think sometimes we don't appreciate that that's often how people are using earned wage access. I think in terms of the sort of business model and who pays, I think there are some really good questions in there. And to some extent, you know, there's some bigger questions even than that around how often people are paid. And from a financial wellbeing point of view, like what frequency of pay best supports people to budget. I think about predictability, which came through in the research that, you talked about earlier, where if people can't see how much money they're going to have when it's variable, when they can't see what's coming up in payroll, that creates kind of real stresses and strains. So I think there's just some things about the system that are perhaps not working as well as they could be for employers and employees. And that's sort of creating a strain and the need to plug some gaps. And I think, earned wage access is sort of plugging.
Hello, global payroll leaders. Are you facing challenges in finding the right payroll talent for your team? If you are, I hear you. And I'm here to offer you a solution, because at JGA Payroll Recruitment, we're experts at sourcing, attracting, and engaging with top-tier global payroll talent that really drives business success. So don't let the frustration of finding great payroll professionals hold you back from raising the profile of payroll in your organization. The cost of a poor hire isn't just financial. It costs you time, or worse, it damages the reputation of your payroll operation. That's why we're 100% dedicated to ensuring your recruitment journey with us is nothing short of exceptional. Partner with us at JGA because we're an award-winning global payroll recruitment agency with a proven track record of success. We have over 100 5-star Google reviews, and we're trusted by many of the world's leading brands. And we would love to help you elevate your team with the best payroll talent available anywhere in the world. Reach out to us today at 01727 800 or 377 or visit us at jjrecruitment.com. And while you're at it, why not sign up to our weekly payroll newsletter for exclusive industry insights and job opportunities? With us, your perfect payroll opportunity or your perfect payroll hire awaits. I think there's always a fear as well about technology or new systems that we're not familiar with until we see them fully proven, I guess. I'll never forget an example I dealt with. It was during just coming out of the pandemic where an individual couldn't attend an interview because she couldn't afford I think it was maybe in a train or a bus. I think it was a train at the time. She had to get, but she had earned the money, but she was waiting for her payday. And it was like, I can't get to the interview, Nick. I can't afford the train fare until I get paid. And it was like, well, that's the chicken and eggs. She's earned the money, but actually it's impacting her potential opportunities to get the next position. And it's just confined to a payday.
And the other sort of, the other example of that we've heard from employers we're working with, particularly in sectors where shift filling is an issue, like care work or hospitality, where you need people there for that shift. And if they're trying to fill extra shifts, people being able to travel to say, yes, I'll take that shift is really important. And so I think that's another kind of business case reason for supporting financial wellbeing, for people to be able to do the extra work that, you might want them to do to meet your business needs.
Potentially, I would imagine there are many avenues you could have taken when you're looking at the potential impact of employee financial wellbeing. What was it that spearheaded the research into payroll's potential impact? What motivated you to pursue that as your avenue of investigation to see where some solutions may be found?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I'm often thinking about where are the touch points, where are the bits of the system, where are the bits of plumbing that we could be using to better support people. And I did some work around self-employed people and retirement saving, and it becomes really clear that one of the things that stops a lot of self-employed people saving for retirement is actually the kind of putting in place something, moving the money into the pension, whereas employed people have that in workplace pensions, particularly since automatic enrolment. So you realise that there's this thing that is working really well in pension saving for employed people that self-employed people don't have. And then we sort of built out from that. So we've spent about 5 years looking at workplace saving, and particularly at payroll savings. So an employer puts in place a savings provider, and an employee can sign up to save, and a savings account is created in their name, and they save a certain amount each pay period via payroll. And what we found is people really valued that as a way of saving. Often what people do when they start to try and save is say, I'll see if there's any money left at the end of the pay period, and if there is, I'll save it. And often you get to the end of the pay period and there's no money left. Whereas actually when you pull that forward to the start of the pay period and the money moves into savings before it hits people's pocket, it's moving before they get their take-home pay, and it's moving automatically via payroll. People really value that. They talk about that just making it so much easier for them to save. And so we started to think, okay, well, kind of that's really interesting. There's something that's happening here. as you say, there's kind of innovation in things like earned wage access, workplace loans. So we just sort of started to think, hang on a minute, you've got this pay moment that seems to behaviorally be able to support people to do things with their money that they want to do better than if we don't use that. And I think the other thing that I learned through doing the workplace savings work from talking to a lot of employers is that there's a lot of frustration around payroll setups, systems, software, technology. And I think a lot of employers want to do more with their payroll moment, even from simplifying pay slips so people can read them better and, see things like their employer pension contribution. Employers put a lot of money into pension contributions to their employees, and often employees aren't aware of that. So employers wanting to do more with payroll, but not feeling able to do that because of sort of system restrictions and bandwidth restrictions and all of those kind of things. And then the sort of last piece of the puzzle for us was doing a little bit of work with Pay Captain, who are a really innovative cloud-based payroll provider, and who were already thinking about some of the things that they could be doing through that platform to support employee financial wellbeing. And when you sort of put all of those things together, you start to think there's a real opportunity here. We've got a moment where money is moving and where people are engaged with their money, and the ability to do more with that, a kind of aspiration from a lot of employers to do that, and a kind of rising amount of innovation in the kind of sector around what could be done with sort of systems and software to support that.
I think it's really, actually, Simon, the CEO of Pay Captain, has been on the show. I know him very well. And funnily enough, I also know Michelle, who's the head of pay and reward at Suez. So I know that they're two very passionate people when it comes to financial health and things like that. I think you raised some interesting points. One is, I think that a lot of payroll people actually do want to do whatever they can to improve the employee experience. It's something we didn't really talk about in the same frame or same sentence. Even only a few years ago, it wasn't necessarily part of a payroll professional's remit, but now it's becoming more and more important. I think what this research does, and for those interested, there will be a link in the show notes, so you can go straight through as I have and read it through, is it helps payroll professionals create a business case to actually have the C-suite or the employer owners, if you like, to start investing in payroll to help those individuals understand the impact payroll can have on things like financial wealth and employee experience and employee engagement. So I think actually there's a disconnect. At the moment, we're talking about employers now understand what payroll can do, but I still don't think we're there yet. I think payroll professionals understand it, but they're often don't get the funding or the support necessarily, because there's still an underappreciation for payroll in wider business circles or wider organizational circles. And I think this research could be really paramount in supporting that. So for those interested in it, just remind everyone, there will be a link in the show notes. Do go and give it a read and use that in your business cases if you're looking for, trying to create more innovative solutions through your payroll, because I think hopefully that will help those business cases. I'd love to know if there are any specific insights that you discovered through the research, that particularly around that payday moment and the kind of opportunities maybe it has presented. Again, this hopefully be really useful insights for those listening that want to create that business case for those for their stakeholders.
Yeah, so particularly for employees on variable pay, the moment when you're paid is a really high engagement moment. And people told us, I kind of immediately check my payslip, check my app, wherever they're looking for that information. And often what people are doing is checking that they've been paid the right amount, checking if any kind of extra shifts have been reflected. But also that's the kind of budgeting moment. It's looking and going, right, how much money have I got for this week or this 4 weeks or this month? And so it's a moment where people are kind of actively thinking about money, but all that's happening for most people at the moment is looking at the take-home number. And, there is other information often on people's payslips, not a huge amount, but, few people sort of see things like their own pension contributions. Often employer pension contributions are not reflected. Sometimes people are sort of struggling to navigate some of the information that's there, but it is a moment where people are really checking in with their money. And I think if you sort of take that and compare it to some of the things like, a lot of employers offer financial wellbeing benefits, and they might sit on a platform or in a different app or somewhere over here. And what I hear from employers is, we've put these things in place, but take up isn't what we wanted it to be. We've really actively communicated this to colleagues, but we haven't got the take up we expected. And I think there's just an opportunity that you can kind of immediately see where you go, you've got this really high engagement money moment, and you've got all of these other things that you're trying to do around money. And if we could bring those two things together, and both speaking to employers and employees, they said, wow, wouldn't that be brilliant? And people immediately sort of start putting out. So we've captured some of the ideas that both employers and employees came up with in the report. But, everything from what if some of those, if your income's lower than you were hoping for in that pay period, what about connecting directly into things like benefits eligibility checkers, social tariff eligibility checkers, money support, debt support, connecting into, you could do some more shifts next time. If you are trying to fill shifts, sort of connecting that to people's money goals and kind of allowing people to connect to that through the system. I think as well, things like, connecting the workplace pension in better. So people want to save for retirement, but often, don't have the time, energy, headspace to engage with that. Actually knowing that they're already saving, that the employer is also contributing to their pension, kind of seeing how that's boosting their money. But then also being able to link directly to the pension. So we spoke to one person who said, like, I check my pay app, and then if I want to look at my pension, I have to go to a whole different login and remember my login, and I don't quite get around to doing it. And you think, what if you could just click through? You go, oh, that's interesting. I've saved £100 and my employer's also boosted that with the employer contribution. Let's just see kind of how my pot's doing. And then maybe it would be also really easy to go, oh, I'd like to save a bit more. And you could do that in the same place. Or you could start to kind of personalize nudges to people and do that in a timely way. So you could say, hey, Nick, you earned a bit more this month than last month. Do you want to put some of it in your pension? And just make it much easier to connect those things and to take those actions all in one place. So you go from something that's really high engagement, but a lot of people are a bit frustrated with, and imagine what if we connected that to lots of other problems that we're trying to solve and things that we're trying to do, and we take that engagement moment and build out.
And I think given the examples you've given, presumably that would create a more positive experience for the employee. Typically, you look at a pay slip, and the first thing you look at is how much you've been deducted, right? So it's quite exciting to see, from tax or whatever else.
Right, and even the language,
yeah, for sure.
Deduction. We talk about pension deductions, but it's your money and it's being boosted by your employer contributions, and we're just not reflecting that in the sort of technical information.
Yeah. I think that's really exciting and a really positive way of seeing how your money can grow, and therefore it gives you a different reaction to your pay slip. Almost you can become excited potentially by seeing how much as you say, your pension has been boosted if you have it all in one place. Now, I don't know if it's too soon in the research, Jo, and correct me if it is. Maybe you haven't got the results yet, but have you been able to define any sort of practical examples of how optimal payroll practices have started to positively impact financial well-being? These things all sound great, that they, in theory, you would assume they would have a positive impact. Has there been any results to show that, or evidence show that actually that is the case as well?
Yeah, so the bit of our program that's most far down the line in terms of having results is the workplace savings program. So there we've been working with different employers and different providers to look at how can you support saving through payroll. One of the things that we've done there is the first pilots we did, people needed to sign up to save. So they needed to go through a process to say, yes, I want to take up this kind of payroll saving. And people who did take it up really benefited, and we saw boosts to their financial well-being. We saw them build savings balances over time, use those savings when they kind of had emergencies or needs. But we also saw that most people who wanted to save didn't actually get around to signing up. So about half of employees said, yes, I think this would benefit me and I'd like to do it. And only 1 in 100 actually got around and kind of followed through and got to the point where they were saving. So we kind of built out from that, and more recently working with Michelle at Suez and working with Bupa and Co-op and their kind of workplace savings providers, we've looked at, well, what happens if you take an opt-out approach rather than asking people to sign up to save? So in all of those pilots, we've got a group of people who automatically start saving every pay period if they don't opt out. So we've just flipped the default. We've made it easier for people who want to get started with saving to save. And we've seen a massive boost to saving participation amongst those employee populations. So in each of them, we've seen a 50 percentage point increase in people saving, which means that at Suez, we've gone from, one or 2 in 100 to nearly half of employees saving. Co-op and Bupa, the baseline was a bit higher. So we've gone from like 10-15% of employees saving to 70% of employees saving. So it's made this massive difference. And then what we see coming through is now we're looking at who starts saving when you get that kind of support from your employer and through payroll. we see that approach is much more inclusive of people who have struggled to save up until now. So amongst the opt-out savers group, compared to the people who start saving when you have to sign up to save, you get more people who didn't have savings before. And you get more people who lack financial confidence. So around half of the people who start saving under the opt-out approach don't feel very confident in managing money. And a really big proportion of them didn't have savings before. So I think we can see that payroll has the potential to reach people who are currently struggling to build financial resilience in ways that other techniques just haven't. Financial education programs or benefits where people have to sign up to get to them are just not having the same reach and the same impact that we see when we really bring it into that payroll moment, and we make it easier for people to get started by using that kind of system and that setup to support them behaviorally to do the things that they already want to do but just struggle to manage to
Amazing.
do.
They sound like really exciting, early results. And we're not talking about small employers either. When you're talking the likes of Co-op and more, those kind of organisations are big employers, which is great. So the total population involved there is going pretty high. Just to finish today's podcast, I wonder if you can just maybe give some practical strategies that a payroll professional listening to this then may want to take now on the back of the research. Obviously, they're going to read the research, and that's great, and they'll understand the benefits it could have. But what's the next step? What would the next, if you could leave a message for the payroll people listening to this, go, right now you've read the research, go and do X or Y, what would that be?
So I think the first step is to understand your employees. Do you know where they're at with financial wellbeing, with financial security? Do you have a picture? Because I think quite often payroll professionals actually have a really good view of this, because if you're struggling with money, you quite often go to the payroll person in an organisation. But, we quite often hear assumptions about employee populations that maybe aren't quite reflected if you do a bit of research. So I think the first thing would be to understand kind of what are the needs in your organisation. And that's what Co-op had done before we started working with them. They'd surveyed their colleagues and they'd found that savings was a real priority and something that they really wanted to do. So I think the first step would be understand the needs of your employee population. Then I think, what have you already got in place, and are people connected to it, and could that work harder for you? But also, are there sort of simple steps that you could take to build on top of that would really meet those needs that you've identified in understanding where your employees are at? And there's a whole host of providers, and we've talked about some of them today, who have solutions that you can adopt as an employer. There's some other information on our website around workplace savings, employer guides and things around communicating with employees around financial wellbeing. And we're also always really happy to talk to people who are kind of working through this. We learn as we do that. So open invitation to people to get in touch and kind of tell us what you're trying to work out, and we'll see if we can connect any of our research into
Amazing.
that.
Well, look, on that note, Jo Phillips, Director of Research and Innovation, Nest Insight, thank you for the insights. Of course, if people do want to connect, I will put some your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. There'll also be a link to the Nest Insight website, which is nestinsight.org.uk. But most importantly, I'll put a link to the research, which is could payday be about much more than getting paid? It's a new report. The link will be in there. Do read it through, and obviously take the actions that Jo has just recommended, and obviously reach out to Nest Insight directly as well if you want to find out more, if you want help with those solutions. Just need to say a huge thank you, Jo, for joining me with your invaluable insights. Thank you for sharing the research, for bringing it to life. I found it absolutely fascinating. I'm really glad that it led us to where we are today. I think it's really important that we continue to build the relationship between payroll and the employee experience. There's so much we can do to better support the employees, and in financial wealth and health rather, is something that we really need to consider, because I think it can play a really pivotal role in the future of payroll. So thank you ever so much for joining us today and bringing the research to life. And for those listening, if you do get a moment, please do remember to share this episode. It can really make a difference to the employees that you're supporting. It's really, really important. I've been your host. My name is Nick Dale. I look forward to bringing the next episode of the Payroll Podcast really soon. Jo, thank you. This episode is sponsored by Deel. That's Deel. Deel is your forever people platform built to simplify your entire global payroll process. Deel's fully managed global payroll makes it possible to pay your entire team in over 100 countries and in over 200 currencies, all in one place. So whether you're an enterprise business, a small company, or something in between, Deel is built to meet your unique business needs. So if you're ready to transform your global payroll system, click the link in the show notes to book a demo with Deel today. That's Deel.